Yeah. Okay. What's some fanecha? Okay, good morning everyone. Here we are on Daf, the bottom of Daf Memhei Amud Bet 45b, Shabbat. And yesterday's Gemara, yesterday's Shir, we ended by saying that Shlokish said in Tzidon, a menorah, candelabra, that can be moved with one hand is okay to be moved on Shabbat, right? One that needs two hands is Asur. Rabbi Yochanan said, look, the only heter is going to be with a ner, but a menorah, even if you can carry it with one hand, it's Asur to carry it. So the Gemara said, what is the reason for this? V'tayim amai. We'll start from there. 3 lines from the bottom. Since a person has set a specific place for it, so since he designates, you live over here, you menorah, you live there. So therefore a person, his mind turns off from the menorah, because it already has its seat, it has its place. I'm never going to get to be involved with this menorah in its movement. That's where it remains. That's where it. Gam wow. Gam izarecha. Maybe I could see your children too. It's nice to see you.
How are you, Rav?
Baruch Hashem, it's great to see you.
What time did you start the class?
Started it late today, just now.
I mean,
I don't know what time it is now. Yeah.
It's 7:30 right now. Like 5 minutes into the class, it's like I was logging in right now.
We started the classes 7:15 this week. We started going lower, 7:15. But today we started 7:30. We started mamash a minute ago. We started late today.
Okay. What daf are we on?
The bottom of 45b. The machlokes, if you're allowed to carry a menorah.
You're on Facebook also now?
Yeah. So we just said there's a machlokes, you're allowed to carry a menorah that can be carried with one hand or not with one hand. Okay? So the Gemara says the reason is the Rabbi Moshe says since a person designates a specific area for it, therefore he's maktzeh midaita, he sets it aside in his mind. Okay? That is the reason. Now, Amalei Abaye v'Rav Yosef Arei Kilas Chasan Da'am Kavelei Makam V'Amashmum Mishum Reb Chia Kilas Chasanim Muter Lin Toisa Umuter Lefarka B'Shabbos. 1 second. A Kilas Chasanim was some sort of canopy over your bed that was like a slanty roof, and the top was not even a tefach wide, and it basically was held up by 2 poles right in the center of the bed on each side of the bed, and you had this right, and it go like this, and you had a pole right over here that held up, and then a pole on the other side, and then you had a pole going across the 2 poles, and that's it. It held it up. So Shmuel said in the name of Reb Chia that a kilas chasanim, you're allowed to move it, which means you're allowed to spread it over, and you're allowed to take it apart on Shabbat. Why are you allowed to take it apart? It's an ohel. The answer is because it's not a real ohel, because it's not even a tefach wide. The actual roof over your head is not even one tefach wide, so you could even take it apart and you could spread it. Now, that has this very specific designated spot, just like a menorah, just like a candelabra. And yet, he allowed you to move it around, to take it apart, to put it together. Elo amar Abaya b'shel chuyos. So Abaya says, no. So the machlokes is, now, by the way, so the Gemara falls off from this now. And the Gemara wants to explain the machlokes in another way. Tosfos does speak out here that something that is mamish, you're makpid to move it. It has a place that's so specific for it, you'll never move it from there. Okay? That is muktzah. Okay? Even though the Gemara is falling off from this by showing from the Kilas Chasanim, but sometimes you have something in your home which you don't want it to move from that spot ever. It's like a nice ornamental or whatever. This is where this, people have beautiful things in their homes and they put it in a specific place and it's a certain look and they never want to move it for anything. That's where it stays. It could be there for 5 years. That's muktzah. Okay? Just because it has, you're makpid, you're particular about moving it and from its designated spot, so your mind is off, your mind has been removed, you were not making it, you didn't prepare to move it on Shabbat. So if 1 year, 1 day, suddenly you decide you want to move it, you want to show it to somebody, you can't move it. Okay, Elo Amar Abaya. So what is the machlokes by the menorah, the candelabra, where Rav Shlakish says if it can be moved with one hand, you can move it, but if it's so heavy that you need 2 hands, you can't. And Rabbi Yochanan says no, any candelabra is aser. So the Gemara says b'shel chuyos. We're speaking about a menorah that is made up of different parts. This candelabra has chuliot. Chuliot means like discs, like vertebrae, literally. It means it has different parts. And you put it together. This into that, right? Fine. So, okay. So what's the matter? So what's it about then? So the Chachamim, they said, you can't move it. Why? Nothing to do with muktzah. It's a new reason. It's a gzeira. Because when you move these things, sometimes they come apart. And you're involved in trying to move it for whatever reason, you might put it back together. We're worried that if it falls, you're going to just put it back in. And that's a real isur of makeh b'patish, putting it back together, a keli, giving it the last hammer blow, right? And creating and finishing the product. That's what you would be doing if you put it back together. So therefore they said that you can't carry a menorah. So then you might wonder, so why does the Shlokish say that if you carry it with one hand, you can move it around? That's the Gemara asks. The Shari. So why would Rav Shlokish say that it's mutter to carry? This worry you have even if it's a light menorah. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, "My chuyot ke'en chuyot, the itpachitki." Okay, so the Gemara says, look, if it has chuyot, we're not talking about if it has chuyot. We're talking about a menorah that looks. There was a style that they made a menorah that was actually made out of one piece. You weren't able to put it back together. It looked like it had many pieces because they made little grooves in the menorah to make it look like it was made of different pieces, but it was made out of one piece. So what's the problem? So the problem is like this. Hilkach. The Gemara now explains. Chuyot ben gdola ben ktana asur l'taltala. If it actually has chuyot, whether it's large or small, meaning whether it's carried with 2 hands or with 1 hand, of course, Resh Lakish agrees with Rabbi Yochanan. There's absolutely no machlokat there. Everybody's worried about the fact that it might come apart, and chas v'shalom, he might put it back together, and therefore they said, don't move such a menorah. So where is the machlokat? And everyone agrees, one more little place where they agree, by a large menorah that needs to be carried with 2 hands. Even if it's made out of 1 piece of metal, but if it has chitki, then people might say, oh, 1 second. If I can move that menorah right there, that large thing, then I can move another one that is actually made out of chuyot. They're not going to notice the difference. Oh, that one wasn't really chuyot. This one is chuyot. The rabbi said I can move that. So next week I want to move one that's basically almost the exact same thing. I'll do it, even though that one is chuyot. And that's a problem. So therefore they incorporated any large menorah that has chitki because it looks like chuyot, and everyone agrees to that. Where's the machloket? Ki pligi biktana de itba chitki. By a very light one. They can carry with one hand, a small one. But it has grooves. Marasav gazrinan or marasav lo gazrinan. So Rabbi Yochanan said it has grooves. So if we allow you to move that light little one, you're going to come to move one that really is made out of different parts, which is a real problem. But Shlokish wasn't as worried. He said there was no gzeira on the little one. Since normally they didn't make little ones out of different parts. So therefore the person that sees it will not make a mistake and think that one has parts. He's going to understand that it's just grooves going around it since it's so light. That is the machlokes. On a little light one that has grooves, will the man make a mistake and think, oh, that one had grooves? So that one, if it had grooves, so that one had parts. No. Shlokish is not worried about it. Rabbi Yochanan is worried about it. Okay? So the Gemara says like this. Now, yesterday we said that Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef came back from Eretz Yisrael, and he said, let me tell you the news. The news is that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, he holds like Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Yochanan, he follows Rabbi Yehuda with Muktzah, and Muktzah Machas Mius, and Muktzah Migadi Iskatzoy Lebein Hashmashos Iskatzoy Lekuli Yoima. Since it became Muktzah for Bein Hashmashot, it's Muktzah the whole Shabbat. And then Rabbi Yosef got all excited. He said, oh, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Omru, they said that looks like Rabbi Shimon, but not him. Right? Because they got the news. The news came in from Eretz Yisrael, Rabotai, that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara asks, how could you say that? The Gemara goes back to that. We were busy with that yesterday for a while. The Gemara goes back to that. The Gemara says, Ubi Amar Rabbi Yochanan Hachi, Va Amar Rabbi Yochanan Halacha Kistam Mishnah. How could you tell me that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yochanan holds like a Stam Mishnah. A Stam Mishnah means a Mishnah which is sasum, closed. It doesn't say a specific name behind it. So if it's just written as a halacha without any name, that's a very powerful Mishnah. That means that Rebbe is saying that that's the halacha, not giving it a name. This is the law. No name needed. It's not one man. It's not this man. It's not a specific man. This is the law. And Rabbi Yochanan, Stam Tanakama is Rabbi Meir, right? Tanakama is usually Rabbi Meir. I think the Gemara says Stam Mishnah is really Stimosok Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says in Megillah on the base, I think. It's not. It comes from Rabbi Akiva's teachings. Rabbi Meir was a Talmud. It could be, but if it wasn't written as a Tanakama with someone else or as a certain person's halacha, could be Rabbi Meir. But the halacha is like a Stam Mishnah. This is a very famous law throughout Shas. The halacha follows a Stam Mishnah. Okay? So, Rabbi Yochanan for sure said that, right? He said that. Now, Rabbi Yochanan said that the halacha follows a Stam Mishnah, and there is a Stam Mishnah that goes like Rabbi Shimon. Now, there's a problem saying that Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda. If Rabbi Yochanan himself said that halacha follows a Stam Mishnah, and we have a Mishnah that goes like Rabbi Shimon, what's the Mishnah? We know the Mishnah already. The Mishnah is just we didn't speak about this detail in the Mishnah. By the way, since this is a little bit of a brand new topic, I would like to throw in 1 minute of an addition from a shir that we gave the other day. 2 different things. One is that the Gemara asked the question the other day, and I told you I didn't understand the answer. The Gemara said,
Sounds kind of choppy.
What was holding the bed?
Can't hear me?
I can hear you, but it sounds a little choppy.
It's choppy? Okay? We're gonna. Yeah.
Everything looks good on this side.
On Daf Mem Gimel Amid Aleph, the bed is holding up the beam that broke. So we asked, according to the Man Omar, that you're not allowed to be mevatel a keli mehechano. You're nullifying it because now you're nullifying its usage because now it's stuck there because it becomes a basis l'davar ha'asur. So we said, how could he do that? How could he put this thing there? Now it's going to be stuck there, so it's like building, and you're nullifying its usage. So the Gemara answered, "Derafi di boy shakale." It's weak, it's loose, it's not really stuck in there. So the way they learn it is that the bed is not stuck into the roof. You can always move it around. The way I understand it is that, and I don't really explain anything here, but I think that what it means is like this. After I stick it in, I guess the beam stays there, okay. And now all I have is my bed up there, so and it's not really like if it was stuck inside, so then if I would move it, then I would end up moving out then maybe the beam would fall down.
It's like a somech. The bed is more like a, just in case kind of deal.
I'm not sure if it's just in case, but now that I got it back in, it's not really needed there anymore. And it's loose, it's not stuck inside. So it's not stuck inside, it's not really embedded into anything, and it's not needed there anymore. So therefore, if I move it around, it's not really a bus. The way I understood it, it's not really so much of a bus. I still don't have a clear understanding of that answer. I'll tell you the truth, but I know it's talking about the bed. That's number one. Number two is that today, yes?
Hey, yeah, the audio is very choppy.
We keep working on it. Is it better right now? We just moved it over. Hello, hi. Is it better now?
I can hear you, but it just sounds like you're cracking. It's very difficult to... Okay, I'll watch on Facebook, don't worry.
He's going to try one more thing. Did it get better?
Move the router a little closer.
We moved the what?
The router?
We moved the router a little closer. Is it a little better? So, okay.
It's the Satan.
Yes, it is.
It's the Satan, Rabbi.
This is Satan. Shmuley,
What? Yeah.
you ready?
I'll see you on Facebook.
Okay. You can see. So now the Gemara says like this. Okay, so that's number one from the other day. I do want to throw in another caveat. I'm sorry for everybody that, everybody wants to continue in the daf, but I feel like I missed something in the daf yesterday or 2 days ago when I didn't mention it. You remember the case where the Chachamim said that if you want to honor a mace, you have to get hot first, where you're sitting, then bring a bed with you and your friend, then wait till your head gets hot, which just comes later, then bring a thing, and then stand the beds up so you don't have to hold on to it anymore. And now you have a nice tent for yourself. What? And then you can leave. Right? That's what the Chacham said. I just want to mention one more thing that Rashi mentioned over there. It's a long Rashi there. There's another issue here. Forget about moving things for a muktzah item. There's a problem of making a tent. Now that we're talking about making a tent over here, right? About the Kiyos Chasanim. So I wanted to mention that I forgot to, when I was preparing, I said, I don't think I said that. That Rashi. The Rashi says there, that why are you allowed to make such a tent on Shabbat? There should be an Isser of making a tent. The answer is it's only midrabanan. No, it was tefach. It's only midrabanan because it's an oil haroi. Because it was not permanent. Okay, that's number one. So okay, so yeah, but it's still midrabanan. It's asur. The answer is midrabanan. The isur is only when you build it normally. You put the walls up. It's called milamata lemayla. You go lamata, and then you go lemayla. But this one, you already had the thing up before you made the walls. Your walls you were sitting on your walls. They weren't walls yet. So milamayla lemata, on an oil that's aroi, that's only derabanan, because it's not permanent, that's mutar. Just wanted to mention that. It's very important for that sugya. Let us continue now. Did Rabbi Yochanan really say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda? That's what Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef told us, that is the news. The news is that Rabbi Yochanan, this is the news, Rabbi say. People think the news is this and that and Iran and North Korea, Corona. The news is, this is the news. This news never goes out of print, okay? It's always fresh. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef let us know that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds like Shimon. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef let us know that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi holds like Rabbi Shimon. And Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Frak the Gemara. How could you say Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yochanan himself said that we pass like a Stam Mishnah. And there's a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Shimon. What's that Stam Mishnah? We had it before. Utanan Muchni Shelo. The wheel of the wagon. Bizman shehi nishmetet. When it is, it's able to be slipped off and it's its own entity. It's its own keli. Ein chibrula. It won't have tumah with it. It's a separate thing. The enimdedetima, and it doesn't get measured with it to measure to see if it holds 40 sa of liquids. I'm saying this quickly because we had it yesterday, 2 days ago, to know if it's tameh or not, because it's a separate entity. Vein matzelatima be'olamet, and it doesn't save be'olamet, right? Remember we said that the people inside get saved from the bottom, but the items on top of the wheel that went over the mate, they don't get saved. Ve'ein gorino ta b'Shabbat. This is the main point for us now, and you can't pull the wagon on Shabbat bizman sheyesh alei ma'ot, when there is money on top of the wheel. There was some sort of compartment over there. They put things in sometimes on the top of the wheel. Why not? Because you're moving this muktzah wheel, okay? So it sounds like ha'ein alei ma'ot shaya. It sounds like this. If there's money on it, don't move it. If there's no money on it, you just go check the wheel. Like, is there money on it? Oh, there's no money on it? Okay, it's fine. One second. If there's no money on it, it's fine. What about if there was money on it? This is the morning of Shabbat. I want to move it. Okay, check if there's money on it. 1 second. That's all we have to do? Which sounds like from the Mishnah that even if there was money last night, ben hashmashot, there's no problem. Whose shita is that? Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, I don't care what happened last night. Migudit katzai leben hashmashot. That doesn't have any bearing to what is now. Now, is it a basis or it is not a basis? It's not a basis, great. Use it. That's what it sounds like in this Mishnah, like Reb Shimon. And it's a stam Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan should have to go like it. So how can Rabbi Yochanan go like Rabbi Yehuda? So the Gemara says, Amr Abzir, tehei mishnatenu shelo yalo ma'ot kol ben hashmashot shelo shbo dvarav shel Rabbi Yochanan. You know, in order not to break the words of Rabbi Yochanan, that he said the halach is like a stam Mishnah, and he said the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda, we'll have to interpret out this Mishnah to mean like this. Bizman sheyesh alei ma'ot, don't move it in a time when there was ma'ot on it, not now. Not bizman right now to check. If there was ma'ot on it, ben hashmashot. Means that is the criteria, which is Rabbi Yehuda's criteria. We'll make the Mishnah work with Rabbi Yehuda in order to have Rabbi Yochanan being able to say he goes like Rabbi Yehuda and still going like a Stam Mishnah. Fine. Which means you could interpret it that way. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Pamachas holach Rabbi Lidioispira. V'hora b'menorak Rabbi Shimon ben Ner. Very interesting statement. Rabbi once went to this place called Diospira. And what did he rule over there? He ruled in a menorah and a candelabra like Rabbi Shimon with a ner, with a lamp. What does that mean? So Ibaylu, in the yeshiva, they had a question what that meant. Does it mean Hayre b'menorah ki Rabbi Shimon b'ner le'atera? Which means Rabbi ruled like Rabbi Yochanan that said that if it's a light menorah, even if it has grooves around it, you can move it like Rabbi Yochanan. Just like Rabbi Shimon said that you're allowed to move a lamp that was an old lamp that was already went out. You're allowed to move an old lamp. So Rabbi said for the same price, you can also move a candelabra. Just like Rabbi Shimon said, Ner, so to I say b'menorah. That's one way of understanding Rabbi. Oidilma, there's two separate rulings here. Hayre b'menorah li'isura. And Rabbi Shimon ben Ner le'atera. There's two separate rulings. One is by menorah. By menorah, it's asur. By menorah, it's asur. Like Reb Shlokish. Okay? When it's a light menorah that has grooves, it's asur like Reb Shlokish. And he also ruled like Rabbi Shimon by a ner. Le'atera. The Gemara says, Teku, we don't know what it means. We'll find out. Bezrat Hashem. Rav Malkiya ikla lebei Rabbi Simloi v'tiltil shraga v'ikpid Rabbi Simloi. Rabbi Malkiya visited the house of Rabbi Simloi, and he moved a lamp. Now, this lamp obviously was not lit. It went out. Once it goes out, Rabbi Shimon's opinion is you're allowed to move it. That's what Rabbi Malkiya did. And Rabbi Simloi got upset. So we see that Rabbi Simloi and Rabbi Malkiya were arguing about if you go like Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Yehuda. Okay? Rabbi Yossi Glilo ikla le'aseh de Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina v'tiltel shraga v'ikpid Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina. Same exact story with Rabbi Yossi Glilo from the Galil. He visited the city of Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina, and he moved a lamp. It wasn't his house; it was his city, and he got upset. Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina went like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay. Now, Rabbi Avo was a Talmid of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Okay? Now, we know that Rabbi Yochanan goes like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon Levi, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, goes like Rabbi Shimon. So what did Rabbi Avo, the Talmud of both of them, do? So now the Gemara brings like this. Rabbi Avo, ki ikla la'atri to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi have metal shaga. When he went to Rabbi Shimon Levi's city, like they went like Rabbi Shimon, he moved it. Ki ikla la'atri to Rabbi Yochanan they have a metal shaga. So the Gemara says, Manavshach. What does he want over here? Well, who would decide something? Let him do like Rabbi Yehuda and not move it even when he goes to Rabbi Shimon Levi. Let him move it in both places. So the Gemara says, he really goes like Rabbi Shimon. That's why he was able to move it when he went to Rabbi Shimon Levi's city. But because of the covet of Rabbi Yochanan, he was in Rabbi Yochanan's city, he didn't move it. They can't say the opposite way, Rashi says, because you can't say he held like Rabbi Yehuda, you can't. But for the covet of his Rebbe, Yeshua Levi, he moved it. For the covet of your Rebbe, you're not allowed to do an Isser D'Rabbanan.
Covet for another Rebbe?
It was, both of them were his Rebbeim. So when you go to your Rebbe's city, you can't say, oh, because of your covet, I'll do an Isser Muktzah. If you don't hold that it's Mutar, if it's Asur, if you really rule like Rabbi Yochanan, that it's Asur, like Rabbi Yehuda, you're not allowed to say, oh, well, I'm in your city, and you say, okay, so I'll move it. That the Gemara didn't try, says Rashi. They only tried the other way. You hold, you're allowed to move it, no problem. You're allowed to refrain from moving it in the city of your Rebbe that holds it's Asur. Okay. So now, By the way, let's say the lamp was not lit. This is not by the way. This is an introduction to the next piece of Gemara. Let's say the candelabra was not, the lamp, the ner, was not lit on Shabbat. Let's get out of that whole issue with Rabbi Yehuda. Say, oh, it was already muktzah, it's a muktzah for the whole Shabbat. Let's just say it was a lamp that wasn't lit this Shabbat. But it's an old lamp. That means it was once lit already. It's an earthenware thing. It has oil in there. So there's a certain element of mi'us. It's repulsive because people are not going to use this candelabra that much for anything else. Okay? So is it muktzah because it's mi'us or not? Okay? So we said in our Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda holds it's muktzah machmas mi'us. Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of muktzah machmas mi'us. He holds you're allowed to move a ner yashan. An old, means it was once used. So the Gemara says, Omar Rav Yehuda. Don't get that mixed up with Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. This is Rav Yehuda, this is an Amora. Many years later.
How do you differentiate?
Rav is an Amora always. Rabbi is usually a Tana.
And they would never put the reish like there as a Rabbi. There's Aleph reish.
Yeah, exactly. Usually not. Also, you usually wouldn't say Omar Rabbi. Because if it's in Tana, then it's either going to be a Mishnah the quoting, which is usually not Omar Rabbi, it's Rabbi Yehuda Omer usually. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Whenever you see Aleph Reish, Omar, it's usually Omar Rav. Almost 99, maybe 100%, but I don't know. Yeah. Exactly. Aleph Reish is always an Amora. Shraga de Mishra Shar L'Tatula. The Nafta also L'Tatula. All right. Rabbi Shimon might hold that Rabbi Shimon might hold that you're allowed to move an item that is a little bit repulsive, but not if it's very, very repulsive. Which means, if the lamp had oil in it, it's okay, move it. Okay, what time is it now?
8 o'clock.
Okay. Shraga de Mishra Shar L'Tatula. Okay, you're allowed to move it because Rav Yehuda is ruling like Rabbi Shimon. Okay, Rav Yehuda is ruling like Rabbi Shimon, but he says even Rabbi Shimon, which doesn't have a muktzah machmas mius, that's only by mishra, oil. But the nafta, remember we learned about neft. Neft, if you use this neft, is a very smelly item, type of oil. And now, you would never even put oil in there to hold it as, hold it for other oils. And so basically, the Ramban learns, and Rashi learns, it has no usage on Shabbos. That's mutar, other than to light it, which is you're not allowed to light it on Shabbat. You can't use this lamp for anything because it's a very smelly lamp, because it has the residue of the neft inside. So the Ramban learns it's like a broken keli. The keli breaks on Shabbat. Even Reb Shimon agrees that that's muktzah, because it's like a rock. It has no usage at all. Now, even though this didn't break, it's fine. But now on Shabbat, that there's nothing you could do with it because it's a smelly item. It's like it's like a broken keli. And even Rabbi Shimon would admit that you're not allowed to move it. Rav Yehuda, the Amora, is ruling like Rabbi Shimon. But he's letting you know that in Rabbi Shimon's world, a lamp that was lit, it was already used for neft, it's asur to be moved. But Rabbi Rav Yosef, the Amitavayo, no. The naftanami shar l'tatula. The neft lamp, according to Rabbi Shimon, is okay. Why? Why is it okay? Doesn't he have a great point? It's like a broken keli. The answer is, I can do something very minimal with it, but I can do something. I can use this lamp to cover another keli. Now, that is not its usage. It's a lamp. It's not made for that. So, but yet, Rabbi Rav Yosef said, since there is some sort of usage that can be done, Rav Shimon still allows you to move it. Now, we're going to talk about that a little more in the following lines. So let's continue. Rav Avya iklu levei Rava. Very interesting story here. Rav Avya visited the house of Rava. Hava me'isim bekarei betina. His boots, his shoes, were very dirty with mud. Asivi apuya kamei Rav, but he sat on the bed before Rava. And thereby, he dirtied the bed. Ikpad Rava was upset with him because of that. Now, we have to understand, there's a Chatam Sofer over here in the Akdama to Beitza to explain exactly what was going on over here. You know, we're not talking about someone that had a temper chas v'shalom. Rava was a Malach Elokim, but there was some sort of going on over here that he was upset with him for doing that, and he decided, Bo l'tzu'urei, he wanted to bother him, to give him musar. Why did he pick this particular sugya? There's a Chatam Sofer about it, and I'm going to try to look it up if I can find such a sefer. Anyways, let's see what he told him. Omalei, so Rava told Rav Avya, my time Rabbi Rav Yosef Dami Tavei Shraga then after Nami Sharlu Tatulei. Why did Rabbi Rav Yosef say that according to Rabbi Shimon, even if the ner was used for neft and it's very, it has a very foul odor, and it's not really used for anything, the fact that you're allowed that you can cover a keli is enough of a reason to say that it's still okay to be moved. If that's true, so Amalera because they could cover a keli. So he told him, if that's true, Elameato kolad kol tzorot shebechatzer metaltlin hoy v'chazil ch'suy b'mana. So then Rabbi Shimon should allow every single pebble in your yard, which Rabbi Shimon agrees, by the way, that's muktzah. It's called muktzah machmat gufo. You know why it's muktzah? Because of itself, because it has absolutely zero purpose. It's a rock. But every rock should now become mutter. Because every single rock, I don't know if you ever heard this question that a kid might ask. Kids ask this question. Tell them it's a Gemara. They are mechavan to a Gemara. This is Rava's question to Rav Avya. Every rock I could do something with. And this is the answer you have to tell the kids. On our later, Rav Avya said, no. Ha'ika toret keli aleh. Hani leka toret keli aleh. Which means that something that has a usage, it's a keli. After Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, I can light this ner with more neft. It's a keli. So lost its value because now it's Shabbat. I can't light it on Shabbat. And it's very smelly, so I wouldn't use it for anything. So then as long as I can find the tiniest usage for it, it has retaining power. Because it's a real keli, and it's going to go back to a keli. Pebbles weren't ever a keli. So you can't create a keli out of them and say, oh well, one second, every pebble is a great keli because it has some very minimal usage that I could technically cover, be a bottle cap or cover. It's not going to make the cut. If you were a keli, you already made the team. Just right now, you want to lose it because it's Shabbat and it's smelly, so I can't use it for anything. And I can't light it for its usage. So as long as I can find something, once you're on the team already, then I could, you could come. You retain your status of keli as long as there's something for you yet to do. This is a very important halacha that Rav Avya told him. And Rav Avya brought a proof to his halacha. And he said, Miloi Tanya, and he told Rava, didn't we learn in a Braita, Hashirim v'anizamim v'hatabaot. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to learn about this in 2 prakim from now, in 3 prakim from now, Bamei Isha Yotza in 6th parak. It says all sorts of types of bracelets and nose rings and rings. Mazat Smidim, the bracelets, yeah. All these types of things, you're not allowed to wear them on Shabbat. We'll talk about them, why today we do. But in those days, you weren't allowed to wear them because it was an Isser that your lady used to take them off a lot to show them. So she's going to show them off to her friends, and she might end up carrying in Rishut HaRabim. So we're going to learn about that, Bezrat Hashem. So she's not allowed to wear these on Shabbat. Still, and they said that you're not allowed to even wear them in a chatzer because you might exit the chatzer and go into Rishut HaRabim. But they said that's only if you wear them. But to move them, they're like all other kalim, like cups and spoons. You can move them in the chatzer. If you don't wear them, it's fine. You can move them. Since they have the laws of a keli upon them, therefore you can move them. Now, even though they're not able to be used in the normal usage, they're not considered muktzah. Since they are a keli, so as long as they have some sort of usage that I could do something with them, they don't turn into muktzah. Hachanami here too, so they retain their old status. Okay? Now, we know that there's a muktzah called muktzah machmat. It's a keli shemalachto le'isr, and Reb Shimon agrees with that muktzah. Let's say a hammer. A hammer has no usage. That is okay. Its usage is prohibited on Shabbat, so you can't move it. But you're allowed to move it. L'tzorach gufo, right? L'tzorach mekomo, you're allowed to move it. So, why don't you bring a proof from there? You see that you're allowed to move it l'tzorach gufo, which means, let's say you have nuts and you can't crack the nuts, and I have nothing in my house and I can't crack them, so I take my hammer and I can use them. We're going to see it's a Mishnah later on. Kurnis l'fatzei bo gozim. Take a little hammer to smash the nuts. Why doesn't Rav Avia bring a proof from there? You see that something that turned muktzah because it doesn't have its normal usage. As long as I can use it for something, it's okay. The answer is because there you're using it for its normal usage. I am smashing. What's a hammer for? You smash something. You bang it. You want to give the force of the blow. That's what I'm doing. So even though I'm not allowed to move it, but if I found a niche, a place where I can still have its old shimush, its old usage, so that's what it means. You're allowed to move it. L'tzorach gufo. That wouldn't prove that you can move. This lamp that's they use it for neft, because you don't have its normal usage. Its normal usage is gone. So what he has to prove is that even if its entirely normal usage is gone, as long as there's some sort of other usage, that it still retains its old keli status, and it's mutter according to Shim to be moved. What is that? Covering a bottle. That's why you have to bring a proof from the bracelets. The bracelets, you can't use them at all in their normal fashion. At all. You can't wear them. So what can I do with them? I don't know. Some sort of little thing. You could do something. Cover something with it. I don't know. I don't even know what it is over there exactly. But that itself retains its status. That's what he brought a right from them. We learn a great mussar from here. He gave a bracha to Hashem, to the merciful one. That he gave a beautiful answer to Rav Avia, and he didn't cause any embarrassment from Rav Avia, from Rava to Rav Avia. Rami lo yabaya l'Rabbo. What's the musar? If you see someone doesn't get embarrassed, or you don't get embarrassed, you evaded, you got away from embarrassment, or you see someone else could have gotten embarrassed and didn't, you have to thank Hashem. Rami lo yabaya l'Rabbo. Tanya moter Hashem shebenei v'shebekar also Rabbi Shimon mater. The leftovers of the oil in the ner and in the plate are muktzah. Rabbi Shimon says mutter. Remember, once it went out, you can use it. Amal Rabbi Shimon let le muktzah. That means Rabbi Shimon doesn't hold of muktzah, right? I'll ask you a contradiction. There's a Mishnah in Masechet Beitzah speaking about a Bechor. Everyone knows what a Bechor is. I'm going to give a little quick introduction. A Bechor is a firstborn animal. We just went through Pesach, and Hashem said, your firstborn animals from Tzona Bakar have to be given to the Kohen, and they're holy, right? When they're born, you give it to the Kohen brings it as a carbon. Okay? What happens if the Kohen slaughters it not as a carbon in his backyard, in Yerushalayim, in Haifa, in Tel Aviv? That's a major, major problem. He's slaughtering Kodshim outside of the Beit HaMikdash. Chayiv Mita. But is there any way for him to slaughter it as a regular piece of meat of chulin? There's one way. The Torah says, if the Bechor gets a mum, an established blemish, a real blemish, that the Torah delineates exactly what they are, then he's able to slaughter it like a piece of chulin. Chulin means non-holy meat. Now, halacha is Rabbi Shimon Omer, kol she'en mumon nikar me'erev Yom Tov ein ze min hamuchan. Any animal of a bechor that it's... Now, by the way, in order to establish it, you need a mumcha, an expert. A chacham that knows all the laws of mumin. And he has to render it mum. Okay? So Rabbi Shimon says, look, if you had an animal before Yom Tov, okay, it's Yom Tov, now I want to slaughter this. Oh, look, it has a mum. So, any animal that did not have a mum, or it had a mum but it wasn't nikar, wasn't recognizable from Erev Yom Tov. So where did I think this animal was going before when Yom Tov started? I thought it's going to the Beit HaMikdash. It has to be brought as a carbon. So you can't just slaughter it this Yom Tov. You're not going to be using it this Yom Tov. You're in Tel Aviv, or it's these days. There's no more Beit HaMikdash. You have to treat it like a carbon. So you're not going to be able to eat it for your Yom Tov dinner. Suda, right? So it's a regular animal that's muktzah. Now, a regular animal on Yom Tov is not muktzah. We had yesterday midbariyos. Rabbi Shimon holds there's no midbariyos, right? Because it's not a problem, because you could always slaughter it. But this one, there's absolutely no usage. You can't slaughter it because it's a carbon. Okay? Now Yom Tov says, oh, wait, it's not muktzah anymore. It has a mum. We can slaughter it. Rabbi Shimon says, Ein zeh min hamuchan, it's muktzah. So the Gemara is asking that you see that Rabbi Shimon is very machmir in the laws of muktzah. And he says as long as something was not okay at the beginning of Yom Tov, it remains muktzah throughout Yom Tov. That's very contradictory to what we've been saying about Rabbi Shimon the whole time. Where do we get it? Rabbi Shimon says the oil is okay once it went out. What do you mean? But it was a basis at the beginning of Shabbat. It was lit, and the oil was muktzah. Because you're not allowed to take it out because you can extinguish, and even the stuff that was that oil that was under it was a basis. Shimon said, but now it's not. Now it's not. But whatever Rabbi Shimon over there, Shimon didn't say that. Rabbi Shimon said that even though before Yom Tov, since before Yom Tov it was muktzah, the animal remains muktzah. That's a contradiction. So the Gemara says, Hachi Ashid, no comparison. Hatam Adam Yoshevu Mitzape Imatay Tichbenero. We mentioned this the other day. There, a person waits. When will my light go out and I'll be able to use the oil? So therefore, I already prepared it in my mind. When I light my oil, I'm also thinking about my oil that I'll be able to use later. Here, Hacha Adam Yoshev Umitzape Matay Yepol Mum. Does a person sit and wait, when will there be a mum? Meimar Amar, what he says to himself is, who says there will be a mum? And even if there will be a mum, kavua, who says there will be a real mum that's established? Who says I'll get a chacham to look at it? Because really Rabbi Shimon holds that a chacham is not allowed to look at it on Yom Tov. Because it's like he's practicing law. That's Issa de Rabbanon, to practice law, to judge things on Yom Tov. So he says, who says it's ever going to happen? And that means he has to actually violate, the Chacham has to violate a law. to establish a mum. He wasn't allowed to do that. So all these things have to happen. He's not thinking about this at all. And therefore, he didn't prepare it in his mind. That's the difference between this Mishnah and this Mishnah. Okay? Now, you may ask that we learned before that Rabbi Shimon says you have to push it away with your two hands. Remember? You need to push something away with your hands. Like make it muktzah. Like and put them on your roof. And there can't be any like sort of hope to use them on Shabbat. So here we see that you don't have to push it away. The answer is, this is worse, this case, because there's absolutely no real way for this to happen. Because really, in order for it to happen, you have to have a chacham violate a halacha. So here you don't need the chiyah biyadayim. In those cases, the other cases, there is some very far-fetched, some sort of possibility that I might be able to use it on Shabbat. So there, as long as it's not probable that I'll use it on Shabbat, and I use my hands to push it away from my mind, that will make it muktzah. Here, you don't need to go through that first step of pushing it away, because it's already very muktzah. Okay. Masiv Rami Bachama, Mefir Nedarim b'Shabbat and Neshalom Nedarim Shehein L'Tzorach HaShabbat. Is there a clock? Oh, yeah, 8:20. Okay. So, Rami Bachama asked, a person is allowed to be meifir a neder on Shabbat. What's meifir a neder? We know that if a husband hears a wife make a neder, a vow, that she doesn't want to have pleasure from a certain item, right? So, if the neder will ruin the relationship between him and her, or it's something that makes her suffer, okay? That's a whole sugya in the Darim, one day we'll learn the Bezat Hashem. Then the husband has the right to nullify the neder. That's called being mefer the neder. Okay? A father can do that also to his daughter, as long as she's a naira. So, could you do that on Shabbat? So the Mishnah says, in Shabbat, it's the last page in Shabbat, Namash, the last Mishnah. There it says, you could do it. B'nishalim lindarim shehen l'tzorach HaShabbat. You could also do she'elot. What's she'elot? If a man makes a vow, he can go to a chacham. He's very upset about his vow. He wants to remove it. So you could ask the chacham if the chacham could find a petach, an excuse, an opening, to be made for the neder. Okay? All the laws will be learned about Bezat Hashem in Nidarim. Okay? So, as long as these things are L'tzorech HaShabbat, if he's asking, because there's a Tzorech Shabbat. Let's say he said he doesn't want to eat any cholent, any chamin. That was his vow. Now he has a reason, the Chacham could come up with a reason why he wouldn't have made this vow if he would have known something. So then the Chacham could be made for the neder on Shabbat, be oiker the neder on Shabbat, if there's a tzorech for Shabbat. There's a tzorech for Shabbat. Because it's going to be a food that he eats on Shabbat. So the Gemara says, va'amai. Okay? It says the Gemara, va'amai, leima miyeme de mizdakek lebal. So, this food, let's say the lady said, I'm not eating food. I'm not eating any solids. Only liquids. For the next 2 days. Now, the husband is allowed to go and be made for it on Shabbat. 1 second. And now on Shabbat, if there's a tzorech for Shabbat. There's a tzorech for Shabbat, of course. Oneg Shabbat. You have to eat, my wife. Okay, fine. So she's made for the neder, now she eats. 1 second. The food, she was mesiach dats from it. It should become muktzah. She didn't know that her husband's going to do this on Shabbat. So who says her husband's going to be able to be made for the neder on Shabbat? Okay? And therefore the Gemara is asking, the Gemara is asking that let it not be mutar for her to partake in those things for Shabbat because they're muktzah. And therefore they never become a tzorach for Shabbat. Now you may ask, it's very different than the case of the mum by the Bechor, because there it's asur for the Chacham to do that on Yom Tov, to rule on the Bechor. So they asked this kasha. The Ritva, Tosfos Yishonim, and the Ritva, they say that the main point of the Gemara by Bechor is that I don't rely on what something, if something is dependent on someone else, then my mind is off it already. That's the point. So here too, she has nothing to do with being matir her nedarim. She needs her husband. So since it's somebody else, it's contingent on somebody else's actions, her mind is off. So let it be muktzeh, and she shouldn't be able to partake in these items on Shabbat. So the Gemara answers, Hatam k'der Rav Pinchas mishmei de Rava. What did Rav Pinchas say in the name of Rava? Dam Rav Pinchas mishmei de Rava. Kol hanoderet adat bala hi noderet. She always makes a neder on the das, meaning my neder is with my husband's consent. Okay? So therefore, she's being somech on him that he'll be made for it when if he doesn't like it. So there, and since it's possible for him not to like it, so she doesn't ever really remove her mind from the cholent. She's like, I make a vow on that cholent. If my husband likes it, if he doesn't like it, then I'm very much going to be eating the cholent. So her mind is not off. So the Gemara says, Toshima, let's ask a kasha from another halacha in that Mishnah. It says, Nishalim lindarim shel tzorach Shabbat b'Shabbat. You can ask about your own neder on Shabbat for the tzorach Shabbat. Ve'amai leima miyem edem chacham. Who says the chacham is going to find a petach for him, an opening for him to be matir? Maybe the chacham will say, nice try. You want to remove your neder, but you can't. So therefore, your mind should really be off the cholent. And now, the item should be muktzah even after the neder goes away. So the Gemara says, "Hata milo mizdakel lechacham sagile b'shlosha hedyotot." Okay. The truth is, if you don't find the chacham, okay, you can always get 3 hedyotot. The real problem is, well, the way the Gemara really was asking that you might not find the chacham. So the Gemara said you might not find the chacham, but you'll find 3 people. 3 people is like a chacham for the laws of removing nidarin. But by the bechor, miyemid mizdakel chacham, who says the chacham will do it since it's asur? Okay, and therefore, or who says you'll find the chacham in the first place? And therefore, it's going to be, therefore you may stiach yedas from it. Rabbi Yosef, mi amr Rabbi Shimon kofsa mutal taltalo, kofsa in loy kofsa loy, my timer. Now the Gemara is going back to where Rabbi Shimon said that if the ner is lit, you can't move the ner, the lamp. So the Gemara says, what's the reason? Dilma bahadi denoket la kofsa. The reason seemingly is because if you move it, it might go out and you're going to be over on Easter Kibui. Remember I told you this? So the Gemara asks, "Shamin le Rabbi Shimon Dam Dav Shem Mischaven Mutter the Tanya Rabbi Shimon Megorer Adam Kisa Mit V'Safsel V'Vachel Yitkaven Lasot Chritz." Rabbi Shimon said that anything that you don't have intention is mutar. Right? We know this is the famous Rabbi Shimon. We keep mentioning him. Davar she'eno mitchaven. Since the Torah requires a melechet machashevet, an artisan act, it needs intent. The act, in order to be considered an artisan act of creation. So if you don't really want to do that, you're trying to get the bench from one side of the yard to the other, you can drag it, even if the end result, you look back and you see that it made some sort of grooves, which is like plowing. As long as you didn't have that in mind, it wasn't your intention. So therefore, the Gemara is asking that when you transport this ner that's lit from one spot to the other, your intention is not for it to go out. Your intention is to move from one place to the other. So even if it does go out, it does go out. It shouldn't be an issue according to Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara says, Rav Yosef answers, Kol heicha dechi mechaven iki isur d'oraita. Ki lo mechaven goes Rabbi Shimon midrabanan. Whenever there would have been an isur d'oraita, okay, had he had intention, there would be an isur d'oraita. For example, if he would want to blow out the candle, to get the candle to go out, there would be an isur d'oraita. Even though in most cases there isn't the Issa D'oraita. Because usually when you blow out a candle, again, it's a Malacha She'ena Tzricha Legufa. We mentioned this many times before. You're not really putting it out for the purpose of making a better wick. You just don't want the light. So that's also not an Issa D'oraita, according to Rabbi Shimon. But there are circumstances where putting out a candle is a Malacha She'tzricha Legufa. Because you're trying to singe and to make the wick a better wick. So you light it and then you go, put it out, so it's perfect, the wick. So since there are circumstances where if I had intention to put it out, I would be transgressing thereby an Isur D'oraita, so then even Reb Shimon says that a Dover she'eno mitchaven is Asur midrabanan. This is a very important Gemara. Okay? Dover she'eno mitchaven, even if you pass on Reb Shimon, is Asur midrabanan. If I would have kavanah, I would be a doraita, so then midrabanan it's asur. But kol heicha dechi mechaven ike isur drabanan. But if the worst that I would get to when I had kavanah would be an isur drabanan, like what? Like dragging a bench. Okay? Now, how do you plow? How do you till the ground? With a bench? No, that's a shinu. That's a very weird way. It's like doing it backwards. So that is not doing the malacha in its normal form. Right away, it turns it from a deraita into a derabanan. You're not using a shovel. So even if I would say, I am dragging the bench across the yard with intention to plow, the worst that I would ever get with kavanah would be an isur derabanan. Then, kilo mechaven, if you don't have it in mind, shari Rabbi Shimon lichatchila. Then Rabbi Shimon allows it lichatchila. So what's the Gemara answering? Let's just recap. The Gemara is saying like this: why does Rabbi Shimon say now that I move a ner that's lit? Because it might go out. What do you mean? But that's not your intention. But it's also midrabanan. You have to worry about the fact that you might end up being over an issa derabanan. But dragging a bench is not even issa derabanan, because even if I would do it with intention, it would only be a derabanan. So therefore, if it ends up happening and I don't have intention, that's okay. That's mutar. So the Gemara asks now, Mativ Rava. So the Gemara says, really? That's true? So then why? We had this before. Mochrik sut mochrin kedarkan. People that are selling suits to goyim with shatnez could sell them normally. As long as in the summer, you're not, the way they sold them normally was they wore them. They wore a bunch of suits. As long as you don't have in mind to protect yourself from the sun, because then you're enjoying it, or in the rainy season, you want to be warm and get away from the rain. As long as you don't have that, you don't have kavanah. Okay, that's Rabbi Shimon. That's tznuin. And the people who were so tzanua, they didn't want it to even look like they're doing an aveira. Mafshilin b'makel achorein. They used to hang it on a stick behind it. Remember that? So the Gemara asks, "Ve'achodechi mechavin isur deraita ika." Kila mechavin sharib shimon lechatchila. Here, what would happen if he had in mind that he wants to protect himself from the sun or the rain? Would it be isur deraita? Yeah, shatnez. You're wearing shatnez, and you have in mind that you want to wear it. And yet, the Rabbi Shimon says in this Mishnah, as long as you don't have that in mind, it's okay. What do you mean? There should be an isur derabanan. He says no. So you see that as long as you don't have it in mind, it should be mutter. It's mutter lechatchila. So the Gemara says, Elo Omar Rava. So Rava says, you know what the reason is? Hanach l'neh shemen u'psila hoil v'nas bosses l'davar ha'asur. It's nothing to do with the chash of kibui. We're not worried about the worry of kibui, that it's going to be put out. You're right. There is no Isur Dirabanan, according to Rava. If something happens when you didn't have kavanah, according to Rabbi Shimon, there's no Isur Dirabanan at all. So what's the problem? So they will let me move the ner. And that's why he lets you drag the bench. So let me move the ner. He says, leave that case alone. Which means, since the oil is a basis, because the flame, which is muktzah, according to Reb Shimon as well, cannot live without the lamp or the oil. So they are the base. They're serving the ner, the shalheves, which is the fire. Therefore, they're basis l'davar ha'aser, and therefore they are muktzah. Even Reb Shimon agrees. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about this more tomorrow. We'll get involved. Chazak Baruch.